Welcome everyone to this ROV chat. And today Stephen and I are going to talk about the portal to the universal field and everything in it. And we'd like to begin by reading an excerpt from Itzhak Bentov's book, A Brief Tour of Higher Consciousness. So I'm just going to read a little section from here, and then that'll launch us into our discussion. So this is from Bentov. The universe is a hologram or interference pattern in which all parts are interconnected, containing information about each other and thus about the entire universe. As galaxies move along the surface of this torus field, they radiate information waves about themselves. These waves interweave into an interference pattern and form a hologram, which fills the hollow space inside the torus, as well as extends into the surrounding void. This hologram of information could be called the universal mind, because it contains all the information there is about the entire structure. Each individual human consciousness is part of that hologram. Therefore, by projecting one's consciousness into the universal mind in a heightened state of awareness, one can obtain knowledge about the whole universe. It also follows that the thoughts of all human beings are interconnected, affecting each other and in turn affecting the entire universe. Whatever one thinks or does becomes part of the universal hologram. The implications of this are obvious and far-reaching. There are two things that can be said about the void or the absolute. It is pure consciousness, and at the same time it contains all there is in potential, that is, non-manifest or non-tangible form. It is infinite creative energy in a potential or resting non-vibratory state. In order for matter to appear, and later for forms to appear, a vibratory motion has to be introduced into the absolute. Vibration means simply the movement of anything between 2 points of rest, or 2 poles. In other words, whatever vibrates fluctuates between its extreme poles. So that's from Bentov, and it really so relates to what we do in subtle energy meditation. And so Stephen's going to start talking a little bit about how this relates to the torus field that we use in subtle energy meditation and the central channel. So Stephen?
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Yeah, this is a fascinating discussion. I think the torus and the central channel, the foundation of this is actually, first of all, the polarities of the central channel itself. When we look at the body battery, like any battery, it has a positive terminal and a negative one. And this is described in a lot of the ancient traditions as being Shakti, or the negative terminal at the base of the spine, and Shiva, or the positive terminal in the crown. And if you look at the ancient traditions, in fact, there is a great deal of science that supports the central channel and the movement of energy between these two poles. When you look at the science of the rainbow body, for example, the system actually describes a number of parts of the central channel itself that correspond to the sensory and motor tracts of the spinal cord and the circulatory layer and the cerebrospinal canal itself. So we start to learn, when we look deeply into the science, that in fact that central channel has linings and sheaths around the cord itself, and that the conducive or conductive properties of the central channel actually exist in science, and show that they contribute to the energy transfer that moves between these poles. So when we do techniques like Kriya or Kriya Yoga, or with Paramahansa Yogananda that I did for many years, or Tumo practice, the inner fire practices that I also did with the Dalai Lama and many of the Tibetan lamas and rinpoches, they all talk about moving subtle energy up the spine. So the science itself shows that the cerebrospinal fluid that's flowing in the central channel in the cord has extraordinary properties, and that it is a carrier of biophotons, and the assortment of neurotransmitters and hormones that it picks up and circulates are brought into the four ventricles of the brain. So this literally happens. It's described in some of the books like James Oshman's The Energy Medicine, as being a piezoelectric effect. Now, any of you that are familiar with Joe Dispenza's work will know that the piezoelectric effect can work through bones. So for example, when you compress bones in the legs and throughout the skeleton, it generates electrical fields. And it's not confined to bone, of course. Virtually all the tissues in the body generate these electrical fields when they're compressed or when they're stretched. So the piezoelectric effect is actually partly responsible for these electric fields. So every time you actually draw this energy up the spine, using that cerebrospinal fluid, you will get this phenomenon, the piezoelectric effect, which actually generates an electrical circuit and generates energy in your brain. So the ancient yogis and all the Tibetan mystics were right on to what modern science has pointed to as being a real response of the human energy field to the universal energy field. So once you realize the power of subtle energy and you realize the power of drawing energy up this central channel, as has been spoken about in all the ancient traditions, then the torus, as the energy starts to liberate and leave the body through the crown aperture, and you'll notice, a lot of these practices are designed towards bringing freedom or liberation of these energies through the crown. The reason being is that the Torus effect, as Bentov pointed out, is a natural effect in the universe itself, that we are literally a hologram. This human body is literally a hologram for the universal hologram. So the structure of the human energy body is a hologram for the primary structure of creation itself. So when you do this torus breathing up and out through the crown, and you are actually connecting into a universal energy field, and the current that's flowing, that's generated by these positive and negative poles in the human body battery, then has the power and potential by its raised voltage to connect in with the universal energy field and actually accomplish the kinds of miracles that we in the Western world tend to look at and think, well, how on earth does telepathy, for example, happen? Or how does telekinesis happen? Well, they happen through a really basic effect of us being able to tune into the energy field and make use of the energy body in a way where we recognize that the temple right here is a hologram of all of this. So the Torus, over the years that I've practiced it, along with you, Kev, and many others, we've discovered that the piezoelectric effect that makes use of the cerebrospinal fluid to charge the brain and then liberate these energies. We know from unbound awareness that awareness is literally unbound. It's not bound, infinite, indivisible, that it does actually connect in with the universal energy field. And any one of a number of things can happen depending on how your understanding of awareness is designed to express it. So the siddhis or powers that are spoken about in many of the ancient traditions naturally arise by making use of this central channel, by making use of the understanding of the body, human body battery, and the torus, which is the connector to the universal energy field. So it's really amazing. I think when people actually practice this, they'll discover, like me, that connections to other human beings, to animals, creatures, the earth, other planets, other star systems, other civilizations even that beyond our own, are actually no longer limited, and they you are actually able to realize these very things that you've read about in all the ancient traditions right here and now. So once again, the temple is here, and it is a hologram of all of this.
Yes, it's beautiful. I love how Bentov, he had a vision of I mean, he's a scientist and he does lots of experiments and so on, but he had a vision in deep meditation of the creation of the universe in this toroidal structure, from the black holes and the white holes and the energy coming out of the white hole and expanding and then cycling around and entering into the black hole again, not as a one-time event, but as a cyclical process that is always happening, eternally happening. The eternal recurrence is represented by this field. And as we, in our own breathing and our meditation practice, as we tune into this current that is already there, so it's not something we have to try to generate, and that's really important, because kind of trying and making too much effort can get in the way of just discovering this natural flow that is kind of right at the core and essence of who we are, bringing us into being. As we start to connect with that, become aware of that flow, we start to really feel like, oh, we're at home. It's like, oh, I feel like this is what I've been searching for. This is the energy, the essence of who I am. And then as we're connected to that, since this is a hologram of everyone and everything, we also are able to tap into our connection to each other and to the natural world and to the pure consciousness that generates this all from the non-manifest into the manifest and back again eternally. So it's quite a powerful practice that begins right in here in feeling these currents within us just by turning inward and sensing what's happening, what's already happening within us. That becomes a bridge into this phenomenal sense of connection with all of life.
Absolutely. And beautifully said, Kevin, because I think the key is this natural awareness, you know, the universal hologram that exists as that torus field, it does naturally exist within us. And as you start to work with this breath, bringing the breath up and opening out into and you start to practice that really simply, you become aware of how simple it is and how easeful that flow is, and that it's also regenerating because you're connecting out and then back up and through and out and back up and through. It's kind of like butterfly wings, like transformative energy that's just keeps working naturally with the system. And certainly I think for both of us, we found that breathing pattern is so very easeful, and it does bring about so much effortless, liberating awareness simply by trusting the flow. And as you said, not trying too much. I think once you try, the energies themselves are going to meet with resistance. So there's a really powerful balance that you make between just simply being present with what the energies are, learning to develop a relationship with them. The key in all our, you know, meditations and practices is developing a relationship with that awake awareness, with pure awareness, so that it literally does become an effortless flow. So you find it, you make friends with it, you open up to it, and it releases naturally. So I think that, you know, that's a really crucial point, because really this is the hologram for all of this, which means there is fundamentally no difference. There's no inside, no outside. It's indivisible. It's fundamentally one, and one taste, no separation. So once you realize that and you start to breathe or relate to life in this way, you start to recognize that everything around you is of exactly the same nature. Everything is that pure awareness that's flowing through you. And when you tap into the universal hologram in this way, then everything in your life reflects that.
Right. It's the basis of your health and the ability of your cells to regenerate and repair and renew. It's the source of the limitless energy and possibility that we start to sense when we get in tune with this primary current within it.
So as you said right at the beginning, that this primary current, being in tune effortlessly with this primary current, is the portal to everything. The title sounds very grand, but in fact, it's a really, if that's the consciousness we lived from every day, we would naturally understand that this primary current is life flowing through us. We're not separate from us. We don't need to go out there with our narrative self and identity and try and disrupt it, because it's already present. So in fact, that narrative, that identity, is the one that gets in the way and puts a halt to it and says, oh, well, there are limits to this, aren't there? Or there's some way, so there's always some reason why I can't connect with that. But in fact, when you're in touch with that primary current, it flows through all things. You recognize it flows through you, me, through everybody that's listening, through everything in our environment. That primary current is flowing and is ever present, and you're never separate from it. And I think that really deep, profound awareness of this flow, because really the torus is a flow, right? I mean, it's, if you look at it if you look at doing torus in different directions, it's fundamentally a flow and tapping into that primary current. And that certainly is, liberating in and of itself.
You already always are this flow. There's no need to try to connect to it, just as you don't have to try to connect with others and life. You are this flow. You are this infinite connection.
Beautifully said, Kevin.
Thank you,
Love
Steve.
that. Kevin, thank you. Yes, so everybody remember, you are the portal to everything. You are the portal that is indivisible. You are that primary current, and you are the life that flows through you.
Thank you all for your practice and for sharing this time with us.
Thank you. Lots of love. Bye-bye.